Today's show will feature an opening doors from Miss Linda Kramer, a district update from Miss Connie Blaney, and a focus on learning from Dr. Barber.
Welcome back to another edition of District Directions. I'm Amanda Patterson.
And I'm Lawrence Bothwell. Sandra Effinger is a Central Sophomore English team teacher. She will be joining us again with Miss Linda Kramer, who is also one of the English team teachers for part 2 of last week's show dealing with career connections on opening doors.
I'm Linda Kramer. Welcome to Opening Doors. We're talking about how to prepare kids for future careers. Around this time every year, we start enrolling kids for their next academic year. One of the things that secondary students have to worry about is what to take and how that's going to help them in the future. What courses are going to best prepare them for college, what courses they should be taking at Votech, what courses are they going to take for fun. With the block schedule, there are more elective courses than ever. And one of the things we do not want the kids to do is waste their time. So in order to help them make their best decisions on enrollment, we do things that help prepare them for the future. And here to talk with me about that today is Sandra Effinger, who developed a Career Connections unit that we teach at Central Mid-High. Thanks for joining me again, Sandra.
Thank you, Linda.
This career workshop that you have developed helps prepare kids for the future in a couple of ways. Number one, it gives them experience researching different careers, which we talked about last week, but it also helps them develop skills that will be useful to them no matter what career they eventually wind up with. Tell me a little bit about some of the things they do in this unit and what kind of skills these things develop.
One of the things that I think is most difficult for students to do is to take a big project and break it down into little pieces and figure out who's going to do what and when it all needs to be done. And we kind of throw this out there and say, you have to do all this stuff within a week. How are you going to organize this? And ask them to design, pick leaders. And we have activities they have to do by all the group members, like in class, all of them together. We have other activities they have to delegate to individual group members. And we have other activities we ask each student to do on their own. And it all has to end up somehow at the end of that week in a notebook ready to be bound and presented. I think, oh my gosh, where do we start? Well, that's kind of the point. I don't think there are any jobs that they can look forward to where they're not going to have some kind of ability to work with others.
Right.
And that is difficult. And for some of the students, I had a little girl yesterday, it's one of the things that I like most about group work, who had been out sick, so she hadn't done her work, and she met me at the door at 7:30, ready to come in and start typing up her part of the assignment. Well, that commitment to help the group achieve is an important part of job skills.
Very much so.
They do things, for instance, one of the activities they do, they get in a group and they brainstorm all the jobs they can think of that would require the skills learned in a math class. And then they make a list, and I tell them that 20 is just, a beginning. Let's keep going up to that. They do the same thing for social studies and English and science. And they're kind of surprised how many jobs require some sort of skill. Then they have to take the electives and think of as many electives as they can and come up with courses. And then finally, the third one, which is always really funny, is to brainstorm how many jobs they can think of that don't require skills learned in any class you've ever considered.
Are they able to come up with a long list of jobs that require no skills that we teach them?
No, not at all. And it's kind of, they go, well, how many do we have to have? And the point is, you're not supposed to have very many.
Right.
And they don't. They get really strange jobs, and even then they'll have to reconsider because they'll say things like cashier, and you're saying, I beg your pardon.
Nobody has to know how to do any kind of change if you're a cashier.
Yeah. So it's really hard for them to find jobs that don't require school skills, and it's sort of an implied lesson we're hoping they get.
I bet a lot of the kids get that right away.
Oh yeah, they know
what's
going on.
And I think the other teachers in the system really owe you a big thank you for helping students see the relevance of what they're doing every day with the kids.
Thank you.
Tell me some more activities in this wonderful unit.
Well, one of the things that's hard for them to do, the activities have to be delegated to individual members. invariably require something outside of class and some kind of research that they have to present in a format that's understandable to others. And that's where they run into big problems. That's where the computer lab comes in again. For instance, one of the activities has them go through and interview 10 employers and ask them to determine the characteristics that they look for in a good employee. But after they get once they get this information, I say, well, that's your data. Now, how are you going to interpret it and share it with them? And that's when everybody gets panicky because, of course, that's a very high-level thinking skill,
Right.
and it's totally dependent upon the data they get. And that's when they have to go through and make conclusions, group materials, and end up sooner or later back in that computer lab trying to do a pie chart or
Right.
some kind of graph, and even finding out what kind of graph is appropriate is difficult for them. Any kind of activity like that, they have one where they interview their classmates and find out what their classmates' parents do, and they're so thrilled when they get this chart. and now? And so activities like that are really good for them because you can also get a chance to work one-on-one with the student. And once the student learns a particular skill, they're running around the room showing everybody in every other group, let me show you how to make this pie chart, sort of thing. And it's really useful for students to show that they can teach others as well in the same activity. It's a matter of fact, I actually learned how to use the ClarisWorks charting things from a student last year, so I'm not
Well,
an
and we
expert.
don't even have any kind of indication that student's going to turn into a teacher, but just being able to share information with
Yes.
others is such an important job skill. And it's one of those communication skills we were talking about that employers look for in any kind of an employee. What individual assignments do the students do that depend solely on them?
They have several activities they have to do. One, of course, is the silly situation wanted ad they get to write, which is fanciful. But then they also have to fill in a real job application.
Okay.
And we talk very seriously about the kinds of things employers expect you to know when you show up to fill in a job application. And what things that, and we even talk about, well, what if you've been fired from a job? We talk about how do you handle presenting yourself in the best light, but at the same time being honest, because if they find out that you've been fired from a job and you kept
Right.
it from them, how do you handle these things properly?
Right. You have to be honest.
And we may even role play some of those like job interviews and work with them and talk to them about that.
One more way that we're reinforcing their communication
Yes.
skills.
And
So many
one of-
kids are inarticulate.
Yes, well, and it's really interesting when you do the role playing. Some of them will dress in ways they never dressed. Well, I dress differently for a job interview too.
Right.
And it's realistic for them to understand that. We also ask them to write a letter to some source. It can be local or national, asking for more information. And that's a place to go back and reinforce those skills they've had about how to write letters.
Right, absolutely. Writing letters the old-fashioned way is not a lost art, and these kids need to know how to do that. They can't just depend on the telephone and email, can they?
Not at all, not at all. And even then, I still like to have a hard copy, even if they manage to
Right.
do the email.
Right.
They're supposed to interview someone who works in their career, and that ties back in with their essay as well. But that's always kind of interesting because I've had people who managed to interview like astronauts. Somebody actually got a hold
wow.
of Neil Armstrong once. It's a bit of a shock.
Terrific.
And we've had people who've like interviewed Jack Hanna over the internet, want to be zoologists. So they have opportunities to make contacts they would not normally make. And then, of course, the last thing we always ask them to do, because it's important to me as the teacher, is to write a career journal for me, where they tell me what they've learned from this unit, and to make in, tell me what they liked, what they disliked, and any suggestions they might have for other kinds of activities we might do that they would appreciate and that they think other people might like. It actually gives them permission to sort of talk back to me.
Right. Give you some feedback.
And that's probably one of the most useful things for me in reevaluating the unit each year.
Well, I know that every year we do this unit, it just gets better and better, and the kids learn more, and they have more fun, and the things they produce are just fantastic. And I'm wondering, do they seem to have an easier time enrolling after they've done this?
I think they do. I think they've opened their minds up a little bit more, partly because they have such narrow ideas of careers available to them. If you ask them, they're either going to be doctors or lawyers.
And they have no idea what that includes.
Right, and no idea at all. And they might really be well suited to a medical career. It allows them to figure out whether or not they even need VOTEC. And so they do a better job of at least asking the questions they need to be asking when they enroll. We may not have the answers before they get there, but I think they do a more intelligent job of making choices when they're talking to the counselors.
And not closing off those options when it's too late to go back and take those math classes. That in the Norman Public Schools, we don't want the kids to find out too late that they
That's right.
didn't do what they needed to do when they needed to do it.
Ms. Swisher gave our unit a subtitle. She says, she calls her unit when she hands it out, if you don't know where you're going, you'll end up someplace else.
That's exactly right.
And that's the truth. That's what she's talking about.
Our mission statement here in Norman, one more time, on Career Connections, is that we want to ensure a quality academic education from childhood to adulthood and prepare each student for success by connecting career-relevant learning with rigorous academic studies. We in no way try to channel a kid into a certain occupation. We want them to keep their options open. We want them to make informed decisions before it's too late to make those good decisions for their future. For Sandra Effinger, I'm Linda Kramer on Opening Doors.
Thank you, Mrs. Kramer. The school board has been making many decisions. So here's Mrs. Connie Blaney to tell us in detail all about the goings-on of the school board on District Update.
Good evening. Patrons went to the polls on Tuesday, February 11th and showed their support of the schools by voting in favor of the millage election and the bond election. The emergency levy in the annual election passed by 75% with 2,089 yes votes. The local support levy with 2,087 yes votes passed by 75.9%. 2,108 votes were cast in favor of the building fund levy with a 76.6% yes vote. On the 1997 bond issue, Proposition 1 carried by 76.9%, Proposition 2 passed by 76.2%, and Proposition 3 passed by 76.3%. We thank everyone for getting out and voting in the elections. A special board meeting was held on Valentine's Day at 5:30 p.m. Dan Snell, office number 2, was sworn into office. Tom Clote Jr., outgoing president, was recognized at the meeting with a plaque. The board expressed their appreciation to Mr. Clote, who served 5 years on the school board. He was a dedicated and hard-working board member, and we wish him luck in his new endeavors. The board also certified the votes of the millage and bond election that they received from the county election board. Monroe Elementary faced tragedy last week on Tuesday, February 11th. One of their teachers, Patsy Packard, the library media specialist, was killed in an automobile accident on I-35. She was on her way to a workshop. Patsy had been employed in Norman Public Schools since 1991 at Monroe Elementary. She had library media experience in Arkansas for 15 years before coming to Norman. Patsy is survived by 2 children who attend our schools, a husband, relative, and friends. We express our deepest sympathy to the family and to the Monroe staff. Her funeral was held on Friday afternoon, the 14th. If you are interested in donating in her memory, a memorial fund has been set up at First Fidelity Bank, 131 East Main Street, Norman, Oklahoma, 73069. The fund has been set up for her 2 children's college education. On Wednesday of this week, February 19th, the board is hosting a study session at 6 p.m. in the Administrative Services Center to review the Citizens Advisory Council's Student Transfer Report. The purpose of the study session is to allow the board members to exchange information, to discuss the advantages and disadvantages of each option in the CAC's report, and to discuss this also with the administrators. The public is invited to attend. No decision will be made on the transfer policy on February 19th. The final transfer policy decisions will be made at the regular February meeting set for Monday, February 24th at 7 p.m. in the Administrative Services Center. Public communications is held at the beginning of the meeting. The Norman Public School Foundation is gearing up for its annual fund drive. Foundation board members will kick off the drive with a breakfast later this month for the major donors. The 1997 drive will begin the week of March 24th. Donations are accepted throughout the year. However, the foundation concentrates its drive during March and April. Anyone wishing to donate to the drive can contact our office at 366-5961. For Norman Public Schools, I'm Connie Blaney.
Nifty. Some other guests that will be joining us are Pat Smith and Randy Waddell. They are both principals in training, and they will be joining with Dr. Judy Barber for her focus on learning, dealing with principals in training.
Welcome to Focus on Learning. Being a school administrator is a challenging and satisfying job. And it's not one that someone should walk into unprepared because it just hits you in the face. One of the things that the Norman Public School does to help teachers who have administrative certificates look to see if they really want to do that job and have some training is an administrative internship program. And I have 2 administrative interns with me. One is Randy Waddell, and Randy, you're at Truman.
Yes.
And Pat Smith, and you're at Longfellow.
Right.
Before we talk about the program itself, would you kind of just give us a background on your teaching career? Pat, why don't you begin?
I began teaching many, many years ago in Oklahoma City schools. I taught there for about 7 or 8 years, and I also taught in Putnam City for 1 year, and then we moved to Hennessy, Oklahoma, where I became a reading specialist, and I was the reading specialist for them for probably 6 years. And then I also taught math there. And then my husband and I had the opportunity to move back to the city area, and we moved to Norman, where I began teaching at Irving, where I taught for 2 years in science and social studies, and then I moved over to Whittier, and that's where I previously came from before I went to Longfellow.
When
where I
you
taught
were in
math.
Putnam City and Oklahoma City, what grades did you teach?
I taught elementary school,
Uh-huh.
so I had all types of grade levels.
So you've had a real varied experience.
Yes.
Right.
In Hennessy, I was reading specialist, and I had some students at the high school level also.
And Randy, your experience has been different than that.
Very different. As you were talking, I was just thinking how different it was. I've been in Norman the entire time that I've been teaching. I started many, many years ago and taught for 5.5 years at Eisenhower Elementary, and then took off 7 years to have a baby and get him squared away and into first grade, and then came back to Eisenhower and taught 5th grade for 2 years, and then went into the gifted program, and I've been teaching there for the past 7 years. This year, first semester, I have the opportunity to teach half-time 4th grade and half-time gifted. So, but I have been in Norman the entire time.
One of the things that I was thinking as you were talking is that the amount of coursework that goes with an administrative certificate is not a small matter. And I'm guessing from listening to you that you did that coursework while you were working. Is that accurate?
That's correct.
Now let's talk about that just a second. How many hours in the evenings did you take usually?
How many semester hours? Most semesters I took 2 classes, which amount to 6 semester hours. So it was very time consuming, along with teaching during the school day. So I was very busy. Also, I have a family, an active family of 3 daughters. So it was very busy time for me.
And Randy, you took
I
some?
did the same thing. I took mostly 6 hours a semester. In the summer, one summer I took 9 hours. But again, my family's really important to me, and my career, I was teaching at the same time. And so I basically burned the midnight oil, and when everybody went to bed, that's kind of when I clicked in.
Well, I'm remembering back because I can still physically feel the feel of teaching all day long and then going to school at night and sitting in those classes.
Yes.
And my time was the morning, and I got up at 4 to do it.
Right.
And I don't think the public always understands how much teachers do outside of the school day toward their own school and then to continue careers. Well, let's talk about that. Why did you go to school for an administrative certificate? What was in your mind at that time?
I've been a teacher for a long, long time, and I've always thought it would be something that I might want to do someday in the future. But I kind of put it off, and I thought the time was right to move on to an administrative area. I felt like I had a lot of experiences to offer and to help other teachers, new teachers, so I felt like it was the time to do that.
Okay, and Randy, what about you?
Again, I'm kind of the opposite of that. I really never thought that I would do that at all. I didn't have any interest in being an administrator. I was very lucky to have Judy as our administrator at Eisenhower, and just didn't think anyone could ever fill her shoes or do that job. And so after she left, I began just reading and becoming interested in leadership and about education and research in education and how children learn, and I really like that part of it, and trying to lead people to become better teachers and offer our children the best education that we can.
Right, looking at the instructional program.
Yes.
And I was like Randy, the first time a superintendent asked me to take a principalship, I said, somebody's got to order those paper clips, but it's not going to be me. And that was a really naive viewpoint of the administrator's job in the building because there is so much more. Well, right now, both of you are in schools as interns and operating as assistant principals and yet more like a student teacher, right? Let's talk about what's been the biggest surprise to you as you've gone into those jobs.
I think my biggest surprise was to see how extremely busy the office area was. There's never a dull moment in there. And
my description of it is Hill Street Blues. Do you remember that show? Certainly not with the crime scene,
No.
but occasionally we wonder about that. But it does go very fast, doesn't it?
I can walk in at 7:30 in the morning, and next thing I know, it's 2 in the afternoon, and you think, where did the time go?
And you haven't sat down once.
Right,
It's
that's true.
really busy, right?
Right.
Randy, how about you? What's been your biggest surprise?
Actually, the pace is very fast, and the day goes by very quickly. I think the biggest, rather than surprise, would be challenge. That trying to come in and only for one semester and to build trust among teachers and parents and students, it's a big challenge. And so I think about that a lot and try to be aware that these are people that I don't know, I haven't ever known them, and just to begin at the foundation level and think, okay, I've got one semester to really try to make a difference.
That building trust in our district is extremely important because we do things in a cooperative way rather than you must do this. I'm a firm believer that when you tell people they have to do something, you don't get it done anyway. They might even want to do it, but when you get that autocratic, by golly, you're going to do it, you have to go past a lot of different things. You brought up a challenge. Pat, for you, what has been the hardest thing?
I think the hardest thing for me is working with parents, visiting with parents when you have to relate a situation at school that occurred with their child. It's always an unpleasant thing, and then helping with solutions to the problem. I think that's been the hardest thing for me. As a teacher, that was difficult for me too, and I really feel like that's a very big challenge.
They're not in the situation, and of course it is their baby, no matter how old that child is, and it is difficult. It's very sensitive. I felt like after 19 years as a principal, one of the things that I liked the most was the relationship with the family, because by the number of years that pass, you become almost to use a cliche, a country preacher, because you deal with the families in a variety of ways and truly become part of their family. And
I think families really want to be listened to, and also I think you hit the nail on the head when you said that you're dealing with their babies, and when you try to go into each situation of, if this were my child, how would I want people to approach me, and what would I want to hear, and how would I want to hear it?
Let's talk a minute about the support that you're getting, because in the schools you have the principal, and at Longfellow you have other assistant principals. What kind of support do you get?
Oh, extremely supportive. Everybody is so professional and hardworking. The office staff, the secretarial help are wonderful. I know I've asked them 6 million questions, and they are always so pleasant and agreeable. So everybody is extremely supportive. The teachers in the building, everyone, even the students. I'm in a building that is under construction, and everything is new to everybody over there, and the students will show me where the different classrooms are, and they're so helpful.
That's great. That's great. How about you, Randy?
I'm experiencing the same thing. A lot of support. I feel very thankful to be in a building where the administrator is so knowledgeable and is so supportive, and I can go in and go, oh my gosh, what do I do, or help me on this one, and then she asks me questions too, so it's really kind of a sharing time, but I think that I'm kind of depending on her a lot more than she's depending on me right now.
It really allows you to gain some insights before you become a principal. Another thing that goes with that program are the administrative seminars, and you go to those once, how often?
Approximately once a month.
That's what I was thinking, and I was looking at the content of them, and it's very, very varied from the discipline of students to observing teachers and working with parents and students and dealing with conflict and monitoring teaching and learning, teacher evaluation. The realm of the subjects is great, and we couldn't cover those in the show today, but would you just talk a little bit about what those have done for you? And
I think they've been extremely thought-provoking. It's made me feel like I have this support staff, other than within the building. We have this tremendous support staff in the district with very competent people that have an extremely high level of expertise, that I can call them at any time for help, and I have called them. So that's been wonderful for me.
The security of knowing in the higher administration.
I can pick up the phone and call any one of them, and they're so helpful.
Good, good. How about you, Randy?
Basically the same thing. We have both put in, through our years of teaching, a lot of quote-unquote seat time in seminars and workshops and different things. And every time I leave one of these meetings, somebody will say, well, how did it go? And I always say, it was great. It was really informative. I've learned a lot. And I'm just impressed by the quality of people that we have in our district. I know that when you're a classroom teacher that you have some interaction with the leaders of the district, but this has allowed us an in-depth look at policies and procedures and practices, and I'm always impressed at the level of knowledge.
And it is different than teaching, isn't it? It's a whole nother body of knowledge that relates, but is very different. It took me, I think, about 3 years to enjoy being a principal. As I interacted with a variety of things, I missed teaching. But now I really feel like it's one of the more satisfying things that I've ever done. So now you've got a few more weeks, half a semester left, about to finish. You at this point think you still want to be an administrator?
I'm reluctant to give up my teaching. I've enjoyed the teaching, and I'm still in a process of transition, I guess you would say. I'm enjoying what I'm doing, and I see that it's a great challenge, and I'm just going to see what happens as things happen.
How about you, Randy?
I basically feel the same way, that I can see that there is a challenge, and I like a challenge, and I like teaching people, adults as well as students. You don't interact with the students as much as you do in a classroom teacher, and you miss those relationships. You miss them a lot. And you hear what's happening in the classrooms, and you're like, oh, well, try this, and I can come in and do this. But I just see this as a really good time to sit back and be in this position and give it a try and wait to make a decision. I think there's a lot of pluses on both sides. And so either way, I just haven't made my decision yet, but it is a very good experience.
I'd like to compliment both of you on that position, to be reflective about it, because I think this is one of the parts of the program, besides learning about it and gaining a lot of information, is a time to reflect and say, is this something I really want to do? And you're in the situation like a student teacher comes into
It's a great
building.
opportunity for us, because I don't know that other school districts do this.
No,
so
not
it's a
too
wonderful
many.
opportunity for us to be able to do this.
And it's a nice opportunity for those of us at the district level, too, to get a chance to interact with possibly new administrators, because it does develop that relationship. Well, I want to thank you for joining me this morning and wish you luck in the rest of the semester. And to our audience, I'd like to say, after being a principal for 19 years, that it truly is a challenging but very satisfying profession. And if there are students out there who are thinking about working in education, give it a try. Thanks for joining us on Focus on Learning.
Well, that's all the time we have for this week's edition of District Direction, so it's been real. So for Amanda Patterson, I'm Lawrence Bothwell. Have a good night.
Good night.